Hello, this is Amanda Haywood, live from Copenhagen, Denmark, with the Make Love Not War Passion project, seeking to help angry wives and their spouses, wherever they may be, to turn hate back to where it came from, love. Today, in order to do that, we have Dr. Marion and Dr. Tracy Latz with us. They are the founders of shiftyourlife.com. And Dr. Marion, please tell us, how did you get into this line of work?
Well, I wasn't always calm-centered and perfect, well, imperfect the way I am now. I was a AAA crazy. I came from the world of business, and I could never stop. I could never do enough. I could never be more competitive than I was. In fact, at the age of 35, I moved from New York City to Paris to get a break. So I understood that the French did stop for lunch. And we never stopped for lunch. So I figured I'd get 2 hours of free time. And they had a lot of vacations. So I moved to Paris to have more vacation time because I couldn't take the competitive element out of me. So I had to take myself out of the competition.
Okay.
So by the age of, let's say, 45, I had set up a pretty massive licensing business, starting in banking. I went to the London School of Economics graduate school. I had a good education. I hated banking. I hated working for someone else. So I started my own business at about 26, and I got into licensing patents and trademarks. I licensed Adidas. I started a company in the US called Daniel Hector, which was a big fashion firm. We had 17 stores. I did about $500 million in licensing by the age of 35. I represented Hollywood Chewing Gum in France. I started the licensing with Michael Kors, with just a multitude of companies, and all I did was work. And I thought work was great because I really sucked at relationships. And in my mid-40s, I started having shoulder problems. I sponsored a golf tour in Florida. I didn't have enough to do, so I set up a new venture with some partners because I thought it would be really great to meet a golfer because golf was one of my passions. So we set up the second largest senior tour in golf in the world. And I had all of these 150 golfers that I met and we set up tournaments for. And in the course of becoming a better golfer and trying to hook a golfer, I sort of ruined my shoulders because I practiced with them. So I'd hit 250, 300 golf balls a day.
Wow.
Being a little obsessive compulsive.
A little.
And then I wondered why my shoulders hurt. So here I am in Paris. I'm coming out of my apartment. It's about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is cold. I couldn't put a coat on because my shoulders were so sore. I couldn't raise my arms. Having been in the States like a month prior, I'd been on all kinds of anti-inflammatories that are now illegal because they damage your health. But they didn't work, so I was just suffering. And I ran into an old friend called Philippe. Now, Philippe I'd known for 30 years by this time already, and he went from being a senior vice president at Chase in investment management to becoming a healer. And he stopped me and he said, Marion, why aren't you hugging me? Why aren't you taking your coat off, and giving me a big embrace? I said, I can't move my shoulders. And he said, well, come to my place. I can take care of that. I can fix that in 5 minutes. I said, Philippe, you're nuts. He said, no. He said, I became a healer. And I said, sure, you've been trying to get me to your apartment for some reason for years. So anyway, I went to Philippe's and he waved some tuning forks over my shoulders. He waved his hands and he looked at me and he said, this is all emotional stuff because all you do is work. You're numb. You don't feel anything, do you? I said, of course I feel a lot. But of course, he said, well, tell me some things you feel. And I said, different words. And he said, those are thoughts. They're not feelings. You don't even know the difference between thoughts and feelings. So when you don't feel and you numb like that, you express in your body. And your body loves you so much that it wants to tell you, you have something you've got to address. There's something that has to change. And I thought about it and I smiled and I felt really great. So I was very grateful. And Philippe said, you have to come back in a couple of weeks and we really need to get into this and discuss what's going on. And I said, fine. And of course, I was just traveling around doing what I did and working 16 hours a day. And then about 2 weeks later, it all came back. And Philippe was right. And he said, go to this place called Delphi University in McKaysville, Georgia. You'll learn healing. You're a natural healer. And I said, oh,
He said that?
that's such BS. And the interesting thing was, after that, I'm walking down the stairs. I have this very steep staircase in Paris. And I'm wearing a chrono watch with the 2 pins. And I'm walking down the staircase and bing, bing, the face of my watch flies down the stairs. The pins release.
Wow.
And it just falls apart. So I'm losing time. Then I go back upstairs. My cell phone broke. I tried to use my home phone to say I'd be late for an appointment. My home phone broke.
Wow.
The plug in my computer, the power plug, it broke in the computer, which Apple said it never happened before. All my electronics shattered that day. I called Philippe and said, what's the phone number of this school? And I went there 3 days later, and my whole life changed. So it was an amazing journey. I was ready for a change. And when I stopped being numb, I felt sort of empty and I needed more in my life. And I decided I didn't have to suck at relationships because I was good at business. But I found that business was just a distraction for me from feeling and from engaging in life in a fuller and richer way. So that's sort of my story about how I started getting into metaphysics and healing. And then being sort of an obsessive AAA kind of person, I studied everything I could. I went through a course at Delphi, which Tracy went through in 4 years. I think I went through in 2 years while I was still working. And then I studied energy medicine. I studied mind-body medicine. I studied Chinese medicine. I studied Qigong. I studied Tai Chi. I studied aromatherapy. I can go on and on and on, but I didn't stop because I never thought I knew enough. So that's my story.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And Tracy, how did you end up doing this work? I've read some of your books and I love your stuff. So tell me.
Well, I grew up very intuitive and was a biology and nature lover growing up, and ended up majoring in biology and went on to graduate school in cell biology. I was fascinated by the universe of cells and how they worked, and then how they grew and what created difficulties for them. It was a whole universe with inside cells. And then I ended up meeting the man I ended up marrying when I was halfway through what was going to be a PhD program in cell biology. He said, you're too good with people to lock yourself away and do research and do college teaching. You ought to go into medicine. So he signed me up to take the MCAT, which I didn't even know what that was when he signed me up for it. I thought he was joking. And I found out he'd signed me up. I couldn't get the money back for him, and it was going to be in 5 days. So I thought, okay, I'll take it.
Isn't that something people study for a year?
What is the MCAT?
It's the medical college aptitude test. So I went. I was probably the calmest person in the room because everyone else had been studying their guts out. I just walked in 5 days and thought, I have nothing to lose. I wasn't invested in this, and took the test and ended up doing quite well, which kind of upset him because he had actually taken it before and I scored 2 points better.
And you're still studying. And how long? It's like the bar exam, just for
I studied for 5 days. That's all I had because he signed me up for this exam.
It's his fault. Okay.
So I ended up in med school, and at that point, by the time I was in med school, he and I had married. It was our first wedding anniversary when I started, and studied. Loved medicine and went through that. By the time I graduated medicine and ended up going into psychiatry, which I never thought that I would go into. And I really struggled with the fact that I liked psychiatry, because when I started med school, I said, I'm going to have an open mind. I'm going to look at all the specialties. I said, but the 2 things I know I'll never do was psychiatry or surgery. I don't like standing that long, and I just didn't want to deal with psychiatry. And ended up rotating through psychiatry and was shocked because I ended up going down an elevator. It was a unit where we had adolescents, we had adults, we had neurocognitive people who were brain injured, all on one unit because they didn't have the separation of that all out. And the elevator doors were such that you had a special elevator key, and when you turned it, it would call the elevator up and the door would open, but you had to make sure no patients were jumping on with you. So I'm like waiting for the door to open. The door opens, I jump on and turn around to make sure no one's coming in after me, and the door shuts. Well, I kind of knew someone else was on the elevator, but didn't know who. And I'm sitting there, and it was right around the holiday season, and I'm writing down, and it was getting close to my psychiatry rotation ending. And these people behind me go, my, someone's enjoying their rotation. And I whip my head around to kind of look at them like, what? And am shocked. There's 3 of the medical school deans standing there. So I whip my head back around and I'm all big-eyed, you know. And I realized I really was happy. I really was enjoying this, and found that I could really connect well with people because of my intuition. I could feel the energy of their emotions, and I could sense things going on around them. But I had sort of locked away a lot of my intuition as I studied science. And it was only when I was about 4 or 5 years out from finishing my residency training. At that point, I had 3 young children and was very busy in private practice with my husband at that time, and had a patient come in, and I was sitting across from her, and she wouldn't look me in the eye. I knew she had struggled with intense suicidal thoughts at times. And all of a sudden I had this knowing looking across at her. You know, I had committed her to the hospital a number of times. And finally she said, I can't tell you what I need to tell you if I know that if I tell you certain things, you're going to put me in the hospital. I said, well, I can't work with you if you're dead. So we came to an agreement that I would not petition on her and send her under commitment to a hospital, but she had to agree that she would tell me the truth. Okay. So in this day where she wouldn't look me in the eye and she keeps looking down, I said, how are you doing? She kept saying, I'm fine. Where she had, some days she'd say, I'm fine, I'm doing great. And other days it was fine. And it was an acronym for something that wasn't good. That was F.I.N.E. and it was not good. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she just kept looking at the floor and saying, I'm fine. Well, all of a sudden I look at her and I have this knowing that she's going to go home and kill herself. I sense and see her hanging in her attic, and I'm thinking, this isn't good. So I'm freaking out a little bit. Our time is almost over. And she goes, I think it's time for me to go. And I, unlike me, I go, no. I'm the one, like I'm the boss of this, which is completely not like me. You know, I'm the
doctor, you're the patient, shut up.
So I just sort of go, no, you know, we'll have as much time as we need. You know, I'll say when we're done here, because I just know this isn't good. And all of a sudden I hear this other voice that sort of says, tell her. And it was like 2-sentence phrase. And I'm sitting there across from her thinking, okay, I'm so stressed sitting here. I'm now becoming psychotic. And I'm thinking, what is this about? And I'm thinking, I need to tell her this. But then I'm worried if I tell her this, she's going to wonder where this came from. And I can't tell her. And then I thought, so I'm having this battle within myself. You know, what does it matter if she thinks I'm nuts? She's going to go be dead. So it was this long drawn out thing where I finally say, what would you say if I told you X, Y, Z? And she looks up at me and says, what do you mean? Where did you hear that from? How do you know that? And I said, that doesn't matter. Obviously, it means something to you. What does that mean to you? And she said, my grandmother, back when she was being abused as a child, she never told me one, but her grandmother could tell something was wrong and would read to her out of her favorite book of poetry. And these were 2 lines out of her grandmother's favorite poem. And wow. all of a sudden I said, I've never heard about your grandmother. Tell me about her. And suddenly you could see the light come back into her eyes, and she was perfectly fine. And I said, are you going to be okay? She goes, I promise you I'll be fine until I see you next week. I said, great. Sent her out. And that was my knowing that I needed to tap into that and go and learn more and bring my intuition back, which is how I ended up at Delphi, along with some health issues where I had a mammogram that was abnormal and was told there was no way to fix it without probably removing the breast. And so again, I went within, heard I needed to do something differently, and changed. I had been always very compassionate to others and had sort of thrown myself under the bus, was not taking care of me. And so I began to do some things differently, began to do visualizations where I would visualize this healing light moving through my body, and did that for 6 weeks, rechecked, nothing had changed, nothing was worse. My husband was furious at me for not going and having this breast removal. He goes, remove both of them. And I just was freaking out, scared, but there was some knowing I needed to do this differently, and continued my healing work on myself, and asked friends who were on a healing path to send love to me and light. And it changed. It was perfectly normal. And that's how I ended up at Delphi. And it took me longer because I was doing a full-time private practice and I had kids, and I had to make sure my husband could watch the kids and then go study and come back. So
were you there at the same time, you two? Were you at Delphi at the same time?
We just crossed paths sort of at the end. I was at the end of my 2 years and she was at the end of her 4 years. So it was pretty lucky that we did cross paths, and we didn't like each other at all when we met, because I'm so left-brained, blah, 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 and she's so right-brained and Southern.
We're in this class together, and as we're sitting in this class, she, I'd never met this woman.
You want to talk about relationships? Here we start.
She goes, you're a psychiatrist? I bet, how much do you charge your patients? I bet you have another summer home that you're building. And I just was sort of like, she has no idea who I am. And we had people who knew me in the class who were coming up going, how do you know this woman? And what did you do to make her angry at you? I go, I've never met her before in my life.
That's how the best relationship starts. Friendship.
So we communicated and found out who each other was, and figured, we came from such different angles. My patients, of course, as soon as I took a course, I taught the course. Didn't matter how unelevated I was at the time. But I started teaching intuition after I took a solid 7-day intuition course. So for me to anchor it so I could go on to the next one and understand it, because I have to know everything. So, Tracy channels everything. I have to learn it, be organized and speak it. So anyway, I'm very left brain. She's very right brain. So we could reach everyone when we were together.
Young.
Lovely. Okay, over to helping angry wives.
Angry wives. Easy to help angry wives.
Stitches with the sounds, and we're doing it again today. And you gave some great advice yesterday. And today is the last day of the year 2017. This is recorded on the 31st, and I'm very honored to do this. So what can we do to help the angry wives, apart from the long journey of self-development? When you're in the situation, are there any techniques and tools that you can apply straight away once you face that anger and you fall into that path of letting anger take over? And what can you do?
When you understand that it's anger that's taking over, you can say stop. It's hard to do. It takes practice, but you can say stop. And there's one Qigong exercise, which I love, which is very helpful. Of course, I'm going to do the active one. She'll teach you the passive ones. You're going to go down to your feet and go to the earth. And energy from the earth. Bring it up. On the inhale, stretch your arms overhead. And on the exhale, you're going to shout, shoo. So you're going up, thinking about whatever you're angry about, feeling it deeply, going and releasing that anger with intention, and intention is very, very important, and it really works. There's also the Darth Vader breath. So you pretend you're wearing a Darth Vader mask. And this is easy when you're really angry, and you just breathe in all of that anger and go.
I love it. How do you write that in a book? It has to be.
Those are some physical things you can do. Let's go to
we have
some
a technique.
calmer things to do.
We have a technique that we've taught when you're in the flow of it. If you have not practiced ahead of time a meditation called the Loving Compassionate Benefactor meditation, which is fabulous if you practice it, because you can walk into a situation and transform all of your interactions. But if you haven't learned that technique and that meditation, there's something in our books we talk about called the La Cucaracha technique, which sounds kind of funny. La Cucaracha is Spanish, and it stands for the cockroach.
Not to be demeaning to the person that you're identifying as a cockroach.
What it is a cockroach or an ant. For people who have an aversion to cockroaches and can't do that, think of it as an ant, because these insects have their behavioral patterns that are coded into their DNA or consciousness. And so that group consciousness for cockroaches, they come out when the light is out, no light in the room, they come out, boom, they crawl around. We come into the room, flick the light switch on, and they're and they run off. And we don't sit there and scream at them and go, why don't you stay out? Why don't you stay out? I don't understand. It's because this is what they do. And ants follow each other on a trail because this is what they do. They know nothing differently. And when people are unconscious and they are just dancing in their own reactive patterns that are based on past experiences, they do the same patterns, whether they're dysfunctional or not, without awareness. So if you can look at someone who is just all angry and stomping around, and you don't take it personally, and you step back and you look at them as if they are a giant cockroach with their antenna kind of going on up here and their 6 legs kind of, and you see them as a giant cockroach or giant ant kind of dancing around in front of you with their clothes on, you'll get amused and you won't take it personally. And it helps you sort of disengage from getting your own buttons pushed and being so angry.
The only person you can change is yourself. So you have to learn to have a sense of humor. And I think one of the basic problems in communication today, it's in relationships, is that we don't know how to communicate. People are texting each other, and when you're texting, you're like sending your icon. It's not who you are. It's how you want to appear to be at that moment, and there's no emotion in that. It's all thought. And so we're so engaged in this kind of thought exchange without an emotional exchange that sometimes when we're together, we just explode. Mm-hmm. We don't know what the other one is thinking because we're not communicating. And very often we finish each other's sentences and we anticipate what the other person is going to say without ever listening to them. So I think listening is a skill that we all need to acquire, especially in this age of texting. And we are so fearful based on all the news reports and all the chatter we have in our heads, and chatter coming from social networking, from everything, that we don't know what's authentic anymore. We think we do. We create movies in our mind about what the situation is, and we don't have the peace and the calm within to really listen from a point of stillness. To have a good relationship, when you have an angry wife and a desperate husband, you have to learn to listen. You have to learn to express. And you have this all the time in your practice.
It's an issue of learning to be fully present. And that's the whole purpose of many of our teachings with shiftyourlife.com, is about helping people wake up, become aware, learn to be fully present and not so caught up in the mind chatter, which is all this ego-based stuff where we're wanting to win. I want to win. So when we're in an angry argument with somebody, it's about, I've got to get my point across. I'm right. I'm right. And if I'm right, it means you've got to be wrong. And when we're so busy thinking about how I can say my next thing to prove that you're so wrong and I'm so right, that's war. Mm-hmm. It's an understanding when you raise that consciousness and get into your heart rather than your head, that you understand sometimes in relationships it's better to make it right than to be right.
It's better to be kind than to be right. I mean, what's the important thing in the relationship? Is it to be right or to be kind to each other?
That's not to say that if someone's being abusive to you, emotionally abusive, physically, sexually abusive, then that's where disengaging and sort of saying with compassion, and when you're in your heart, you can do that, to say, I, out of compassion for me, can't do this anymore, but out of compassion for you, I'm not going to try and come after you and take you out. I'm just saying, you're free to go on your path. I'm free to go on mine. And if children are involved, this is how you can do the compassionate parenting and put the children first. Because if two parents are arguing, the children, you're angry at the other person. You're not angry at the kids. And if it leads to a divorce or separation, you're separating from each other, not the children. And so keeping in that compassionate stance, you use many of the tools and techniques we talk about to allow you to be in your heart so that you can walk your purposeful path while in your heart and be in relationships in a loving way and not a warring way.
Another way, it's a great technique when you're in the middle of a fight. I mean, it's not an abusive one. It's just one of your normal bad patterns. Okay? Is to do something different. Mm-hmm. You, in advance, you say, honey, the next time we fight, we're going to say the word like freeze or whatever. And when you say freeze, you run to the bathroom and you draw a bath, and one person has to sit on the toilet while the other one is in the bathtub naked, and then you can continue the argument. And because you do something so different to break the pattern, you both laugh.
That's a good one.
Light a candle. You just do something wacky. But you do something different. The other thing that stops a fight immediately is working. You have two people, you just take your thumbs. It's easy. Everyone's got thumbs. You take someone's back and you put your thumbs on either side of the spine, dig in and massage either side of the spine all the way down. It's called the spinal flush.
And then while you're giving him
toxins,
telling him
so
off.
you're just pushing your thumbs down the spine all the way.
You never do the dishes. You never clean up.
Exactly. And then you put your one hand on the shoulder, dig in, the fingers on the clavicle, and then make these opposite motions. You want to cross over their energies. So when you cross over their energies, they bring their blood back to their forebrain. They're not acting like an animal anymore.
Yeah, because we go into this primal stage.
You go into fight or flight, yeah. And so the other one is just,
get back.
One is the victim, the other is the victor. We don't want to be in that situation. So the spinal flush is good. And when you're starting to touch and not kill each other, it helps bring back joyful circuits. The other thing you can do is figure eights. You just start, say freeze, and then you start dancing around in figure eights, which activates something in Chinese medicine called radiant circuits, which are your joyful circuits. So it breaks the pattern.
Yeah, it breaks the pattern.
The whole body just dancing around in figure eights.
The beauty of that technique is that also when you're sad, down, blue, the winter blues, you can actually lift your mood with figure eights. That actually brings that happiness up.
But if people have centering practices to begin with every day to get centered in their heart so they're not in all their mind chatter, they're not going to get into these fights, because it takes being present yourself to be able to be present with other people. How do you get rid of the chatter? Well, we have some techniques, but before we get into that, turn off the news.
Yeah.
Turn off your phone a few hours a day. Don't feel you have to respond to everything that is coming at your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever.
We're so busy doing, we never stop and have being. We are human beings, not doings.
You know, Frank Sinatra said, doobie doobie doo. Well, you have to do, you have to be, you have to do, you have to be. And I'm one of the worst people because I'm the real do. She's the BBB. So when we're trying to work together, I'm always doing and she's always trying to be. So if you can integrate that.
That's why we have to talk about your special offer, because usually you say offer, but you guys have literally made a special offer to all you listeners out there listening to this Make Love Not War passion project, as I call it. This is made especially for you. It's the Awakening Awareness 5-week online program at a special price of $147. The usual price is, ladies, I forget.
The retail price is around $500, but
for this whole package.
But we often, when we're working with a group that we know has a great need, we have marked it down before to about $250. We're marking it down for this group because we have a compassion for women and marriages and relationships where anger is involved. Our whole purpose is to help people get out of that anger, get out of their head and get into their
And you
heart.
can do this 5-week course in a year. So you're not pressed to do it in 5 weeks because it's online.
Or you could do it in 5 weeks and then work back through it.
Yeah,
And
so you have it available. And we have a Facebook page, especially for each group. So we all interact with each other and you can set up a tribe so you're not alone.
We also have a membership site where we will help give support for people who are involved in this course and answer questions or help when someone gets a little bit stuck with their circumstance or situation.
And we talked about some audio meditations that we had. Actually, some of them are in our bonus gift package.
We have the gratitude bond meditation that assists with being in your heart, but experiencing forgiveness, which can be a powerful thing. And often the most powerful forgiveness exercise you'll do also is with your own self, because we will get so angry at us after an argument or say, why did I do this? And it could be from way past. And what you can do is heal a lot of old relationship issues with this meditation. Understanding the only person you can change is yourself. You can't make someone else change.
So I think we have, 4 bonus meditations that come with it. So they're all very, very powerful. And you have access to us.
And it's stuff that you need to do. You need to let go. You need to forgive. You need to go back. If it's via meditation or 10 years of psychology, you need to do this in order to elevate yourself.
And to be able to listen to other people, and to listen to yourself.
We also give the loving benefactor meditation, which is something we referred to earlier. It's the quickest, most powerful way to get the mind chatter to stop and get into your heart. And when you want to have a heart-to-heart conversation with someone, this will help you be in your heart. If the other person chooses to do that meditation too, you will be able to have a conversation rather than an argument where you're both in your heart having compassion for the other person, yet also compassion for self.
So with the Awakening Awareness course, if you're not happy after you've learned all these tools and techniques, you get your money back. So there's no risk whatsoever. Yeah. The only risk is that you're going to grow. Grow faster than your partner.
Where's the old angry me? Now I'm the new.
Yeah. Where am I going to get my drive from now? Because the anger is not fueling it anymore. You're going to get it from love, which is much more powerful.
Yeah. I know that.
Drop your bag.
I can't wait to do it myself. And I hope you guys out there listening get this one. It's $147, and altogether it's around $700 with the meditation, the bonuses, and this program. So get your wallet out, get your credit card out, put in the card number and do this, because we all know we need to do this, but we're not going to get it done unless we're in a program and in a supported group that will hold us accountable and make us do it. It's just not going to work without. It
takes a little bit of work to improve your relationship. So this is a great, great way to begin, and it gives you enough tools that's all you need.
And it will launch you on your spiritual path for really connecting with purpose too. We teach you how to meditate with that.
I can't wait to take the program as soon as I'm done with this summit. It's on my to-do
And
list.
our membership site will be awesome too. I mean, we've written 5 books. We have over 110 or 120 videos on Shift Your Life TV. You can see what we're about, but this course is really targeted for anyone who's watching this.
Yeah, and you click on the link, guys, and read about it, and you'll see that this really is a special offer. It's not out there for anyone else. It is made especially for the listeners of Make Love Not War, because we want everybody to do that. Make love, not war. Okay, I have to say goodbye out there. God bless you. Nam Yoho Renge Kyo. Inshallah. Wherever you are. Amen. Thank you, guys. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
February when you see it, but today is the last day of 2017. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you,
Our
Amanda.
pleasure.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
And there we go.
It worked, right?
I think. You guys are getting some special treats here behind the camera. Stop.